Emily mistook him for just any security guard. She asked for help without realizing who was in front of her. He could have laughed, he could have walked away. But he approached, whispered something that changed everything. "Pretend I'm your bodyguard. I want to remind you that all our stories are just fictions, lovingly crafted works for all of you. Support the channel by leaving a like and comment, and let's get to our story." Emily's heart raced so fast that she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. It wasn't nerves from the event. It wasn't the fear of not impressing potential clients with her jewelry creations. It was something much more visceral, even primal. She had just seen him crossing the hotel ballroom, and her body reacted before her mind could rationalize. Lily fidgeted in her lap, her big brown eyes too large for her small face, and Emily realized she was holding her daughter too tightly. Breathe. She needed to breathe. 3 years. It had taken 3 years to piece herself back together after that man had shattered her without even realizing it, and now he was there, just a few meters away, laughing at something someone had said, as if he carried no ghosts, no guilt, no painful memories. Emily took a step back and bumped into someone, murmuring automatic apologies as Lily began to cry softly. The child felt everything. She always had. When Emily cried silently in the bathroom during her pregnancy, Lily kicked as if trying to comfort her from within. When Emily finally mustered the courage to leave that suffocating relationship, Lily was only a few months old and stayed awake all night, as if she knew something monumental was happening, and now sensing the tension radiating from her mother's body. The girl clung to Emily's neck with all her strength, hiding her face in her shoulder. No! Emily wouldn't let that man ruin this night. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, fought too long on her own to allow a mere presence to reduce her to who she used to be. But then he looked in her direction, their eyes meeting for a fraction of a second across the crowded ballroom. And Emily saw recognition cross his face, followed by something that could be surprise or embarrassment, or perhaps just discomfort. He took a step toward her. The world turned into a narrow tunnel where only that movement, that inevitable approach existed. And Emily panicked. She turned, searching for an exit, any exit, someone who could interpose between her and the conversation she definitely didn't want to have. Lily was crying softly now, and Emily was whispering nonsensical words, trying to calm her daughter while her own heart threatened to explode. Security? She needed a security guard, someone from the event staff, someone who could create a barrier, give her an excuse to leave. That's when she saw the man in the black suit. He was standing near one of the columns, looking at his phone with a concentrated expression, and there was something in his posture that seemed solid, reliable. The suit was too immaculate, the watch on his wrist clearly expensive. But Emily was too desperate to process those details. She crossed the space to him, in quick steps, Lily still clinging to her neck, and touched his arm with more force than she intended. The man immediately lifted his eyes, and Emily was struck by the intensity of the brown gaze that met hers. He was younger than he had appeared from afar, perhaps in his early 30s, and definitely not security. But the words were already tumbling out of her mouth, rushed and desperate, asking for help, talking about needing to avoid someone, about just needing a few minutes. The man didn't say anything for a second, which felt like an eternity. He looked from Emily to Lily, who had lifted her little head, now watching him with that disarming curiosity that small children have, and then back to Emily. And then he did something completely unexpected. He put his phone away, moved closer to her in a fluid and protective motion, and said softly but firmly for her to pretend he was her bodyguard. His voice had a natural authority, but also something gentle, as if he understood that this wasn't a whim. It was a real need. Emily felt the air return to her lungs for the first time since she had seen her ex crossing the ballroom. "Raphael," he introduced himself quickly as he began to guide her toward a less exposed area of the room. He didn't touch her invasively, just placed a light hand between her shoulder blades, a professional yet comforting gesture. The change in him was striking. The casual posture of someone just checking messages gave way to attentive vigilance, his eyes sweeping the environment as if he were genuinely working. Emily allowed herself to be guided, Lily still in her lap, but now calmer. The little fingers were now playing with the necklace Emily had made especially for that night. They passed by some groups of people, and Emily caught a glimpse of her ex, searching for her with his eyes, but Raphael positioned her so that she was blocked from view, using his own body as a shield. When they reached a side terrace overlooking the night view of New York, Raphael finally relaxed a bit. He didn't let go of Emily immediately. He waited until he was sure she was stable before taking a step back. The cool night breeze hit Emily's face, and she closed her eyes for a second, trying to reorganize her thoughts. Lily chose that moment to stretch her little arms toward Raphael, making that sound that indicated she wanted the attention of the interesting stranger. Emily murmured an apology, saying that her daughter was like that with everyone, but Raphael just smiled and asked if he could. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Daniel carefully picked up Lily, like someone who knew how to hold a child but was a bit rusty. Lily immediately tried to grab his watch, and Daniel skillfully pulled his wrist away while making a funny face that elicited a crystal-clear laugh from the girl. The sound of Lily's laughter made something in Emily's chest loosen. She leaned her hands on the railing of the side terrace and let the air out of her lungs slowly, trying to process the last 5 surreal minutes. Daniel kept Lily entertained for a few more moments before asking, in a careful voice, if Emily was okay now. She turned to look at him and truly saw him for the first time. He was handsome in a way that wasn't obvious at first glance, with strong yet harmonious features. He was probably over 6 feet tall, and those eyes seemed to genuinely pay attention when he looked at someone. Emily said yes, she was fine, and thanked him in a way that felt appropriate for what he had just done. Daniel shook his head, saying she didn't need to thank him. But there was an unspoken question in his eyes. Emily realized she owed him an explanation, even if only partial. She told him that she had seen someone from her past, someone she preferred not to encounter, and that it had sent her into a panic. She didn't go into details about who the man was or what had happened between them, and Daniel didn't ask. He simply nodded in understanding and said that we all have ghosts we prefer to avoid. The way he said it, with a weight in his voice, made Emily realize that he might understand better than she imagined. Lily began to squirm, signaling that she wanted to return to her mother's lap, and Daniel carefully handed her back. His fingers brushed against hers briefly during the transfer, and Emily felt an unexpected electric current. She immediately pushed the thought away, focusing on settling Lily, who was now hungry, judging by the impatient sound she was making. Daniel asked if she had come to the event alone, and Emily confirmed that she had, explaining that she usually had a babysitter for Lily, but today she had decided to bring her daughter, because she couldn't find someone at the last minute. She was talking too much, nervous, and forced herself to stop. Daniel didn't seem bothered, just genuinely interested. He asked what she did, and Emily explained that she was a jewelry designer, and some of the pieces from the collection being launched that night had components she had provided. Daniel raised his eyebrows in surprise and said that she should go back inside, as opportunities like that didn't come around every day. Emily bit her lip at the thought of returning to the ballroom where her ex was still making her stomach churn again. Daniel noticed her hesitation and offered something that made Emily blink in surprise. He said that if she wanted, he could accompany her back, continuing the role of bodyguard until she made the contacts she needed and could leave. There was no ulterior motive in the offer, just genuine kindness, and that completely disarmed Emily. She asked why he would do that. Why would a complete stranger go out of his way? And Daniel gave a small smile before answering. He said maybe because he recognized the expression of someone running from ghosts, or maybe because he had a free night and that event was boring until she showed up asking for help. Or maybe, he added, looking at Lily, who had gone back to playing with Emily's necklace, because making a child smile seemed like a much better way to spend the evening than listening to executives talk about investments. Emily couldn't help but hold back the smile that tugged at the corners of her mouth. It was the first genuine smile she had since arriving at the event. She accepted the offer, and the two of them returned to the ballroom side by side, Daniel taking on that attentive professional posture again. Emily managed to talk to 3 potential important clients, showed her digital portfolio, handed out business cards, and throughout the time, Daniel remained close but discreet, creating an invisible barrier that kept unwanted people away. Lily behaved surprisingly well, perhaps sensing that her mum was calmer now. When they finally made all the necessary contacts and Emily said they could leave, Daniel accompanied her to the hotel exit. On the sidewalk, under the city lights, Emily turned to genuinely thank him. This time she said she didn't know how to repay what he had done, that he had saved her, night in a way he probably didn't fully understand. Daniel just smiled and said she didn't owe him anything, but then hesitated before asking if she might like to grab a coffee someday when she wasn't running from ghosts and he wasn't pretending to be security. The question caught Emily off guard, and she saw genuine hope in his eyes, mixed with the possibility of rejection. Lily chose that moment to yawn loudly, and they both laughed at the perfect interruption. Emily heard herself say yes, that she would like a coffee, and saw the smile that lit up Daniel's face, transforming the serious man into someone younger, lighter. They exchanged numbers as Emily's rideshare arrived, and when she got in with Lily, who was half asleep in her arms, she turned one last time to see Daniel still standing on the sidewalk waving. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt something that wasn't fear or anxiety, but rather curiosity and maybe, just maybe, hope. Emily woke up the next day with Lily jumping on the bed, asking for breakfast with that infinite energy that only 3-year-olds possess. The apartment in Brooklyn was bathed in the soft light of Saturday morning, and Emily stretched, feeling the sore muscles from the tension of the night before. But along with the pain, there was something different, a lightness in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. She picked up Lily and went in the small, functional kitchen. Emily placed Lily in her high chair while preparing oatmeal with banana. Lily chatted non-stop about the handsome man from the night before, calling Daniel Big Uncle in a way that made Emily laugh despite herself. The phone vibrated on the table as Emily cut the banana into small pieces. It was a message from Daniel asking if she and Lily had made it home safely. The thoughtfulness of the gesture warmed something inside her. Emily replied that they had, thanking him again. Daniel sent a smiling emoji, followed by a question about when she would be free for that coffee. Emily looked at Lily, covered in oatmeal up to her eyebrows, and smiled. She typed that she had the day free, mentioning that Saturdays were usually park days with Lily. But if he didn't mind a small, energetic companion, they could meet in the afternoon. The response came quickly, saying he would love to get to know little Lily better and suggesting Central Park at 3 p.m. The hours leading up to the meeting passed in a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. Emily found herself changing outfits 3 times before settling on a light floral cotton dress and comfortable sandals. No high heels or heavy makeup, just herself in park mode. Lily was radiant in a yellow romper and sneakers that lit up with every step, ready to run and explore, as she always did. When they arrived at the park and Emily saw Daniel waiting, near the entrance, dressed casually in jeans and a white t-shirt, she felt that familiar stomach flip of nervousness mixed with something more. Daniel smiled upon seeing them, and Lily immediately let go of Emily's hand to run to him, shouting, "Big Uncle!" Daniel laughed and crouched down to be at Lily's height, greeting her with a formal handshake that made Lily giggle. Emily watched the interaction closely, noticing how Daniel seemed genuinely comfortable with the child's presence, without the stiffness that many single men displayed. They began walking along the tree-lined paths of the park, with Lily running ahead, chasing pigeons that lazily took flight. Daniel asked about Emily's work, genuinely interested in the details of how she started making jewelry, and she found herself sharing stories she rarely told. She explained that she had started back in design school, making handmade pieces to pay the bills after her parents passed away in an accident when she was 20. The pain was still there when she spoke about them, but it was a softer pain now, healed by time. Daniel listened attentively, and when she finished, he shared that he had lost his father young as well, at 15, and that he understood how that kind of loss shaped who we became. His vulnerability in sharing that made Emily see him differently, looking beyond the confident appearance and expensive suit from the night before. There was depth there, layers she wanted to explore. Lily found a playground and begged to play. The two adults sat on a nearby bench, watching the girl determinedly climb a structure that seemed too big for her. Emily was about to get up and help when Daniel gently placed his hand over hers, saying that Lily needed to learn on her own, that small falls taught us to avoid big falls. He said this with the weight of personal experience, and Emily realized he wasn't just talking about the playground. She left her hand where it was under his, and they continued talking while Lily played. Daniel shared that he was the CEO of a tech company focused on digital security solutions. Finally, Emily understood why his name had sounded familiar the night before. She had seen interviews with him in business magazines, articles about innovation and entrepreneurship. He was well known in the New York business scene, and the realization made Emily swallow hard. Daniel noticed the change in her expression and asked what she was thinking. Emily was honest, saying she was processing the fact that he was practically a corporate celebrity and that she had mistaken him for security. Daniel laughed heartily, the kind of genuine laugh that made Emily laugh too. He said that had been the best part of the night, that he was tired of being treated like a CEO everywhere he went. Lily came running back, asking for water, and Emily grabbed the bottle from her backpack. The girl drank urgently, before asking Daniel to push her on the swing. Daniel looked at Emily, silently asking for permission, and she nodded positively. Watching Daniel push Lily on the swing, both laughing together, made something in Emily's chest tighten sweetly. It had been so long since it was just her and Lily against the world that seeing someone genuinely care for her daughter was almost overwhelming. When Lily finally tired and returned to Emily's lap, it was almost dinner time. Daniel suggested they grab something to eat nearby, and Emily agreed without hesitation. They went to a casual pizzeria that Daniel knew, a simple but cozy place where Lily was welcomed with a high chair and crayons to draw. The pizza arrived steaming, and they ate while chatting about everything and nothing, from favorite movies to unrealized dreams. Emily discovered that Daniel wanted to travel to Japan, that he loved architecture and design as much as technology, and that he had a cat named Darwin, who was his companion during late-night work sessions. Daniel learned that Emily dreamed of having her own studio one day, that she read at least 2 books a month, even with her busy schedule, and that Lily was her whole world since she was born. The question Emily knew would eventually come arrived when they were having dessert. Daniel carefully asked about Lily's father. Emily took a deep breath and decided to be honest. She told him that she had met him in college, that they had been together for 2. When she discovered her pregnancy, he had made it clear that he did not want to be a father. He offered money for an abortion, and when Emily refused, he simply disappeared from her life. She no longer felt anger, just a calm acceptance that some people are not ready for certain responsibilities. Lily never asked about her father because she didn't miss him. She had Emily, and that was enough. Daniel listened to everything without judgment, and when she finished, he said something that made her eyes burn. He said the guy was a complete idiot because if he were lucky enough to have a daughter like Lily and a woman like Emily in his life, he would do everything to never lose them. The dinner ended with Lily already dozing off in her high chair, and Daniel insisted on walking them to the car, on the street under the orange glow of the streetlights. He asked if he could see her again, if they could turn this into something regular. Emily felt her heart race and said she would love that, but she needed to be honest about something. She said that Lily was always her priority, that she had no time or energy for games, and that if he was looking for something casual, it might be better to stop there. Daniel became serious and leaned in, not invading her space, but close enough for her to feel his warmth. He said he wasn't looking for something casual, that he was tired of superficiality, and if she was willing to give it a chance, he was too. Emily hadn't planned the kiss, but when it happened, it felt inevitable. It was soft and brief, mindful of Lily sleeping in the back seat, but loaded with promise. When they pulled away, both were smiling. Daniel gently touched her face and said, "Good night." Emily got into the car, feeling light in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Throughout the drive back home, she kept smiling, and when she put Lily to bed and finally lay down, she checked her phone and saw a message from Daniel. "Today was perfect. I can't wait for our next date." Emily typed a simple but sincere response. "Me too," for the first time in a long time. She went to sleep thinking of possibilities instead of worries, of hope instead of fear, and allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, good things could still happen. The following weeks brought a routine that Emily never imagined possible. Daniel was not the type of man who made promises and then disappeared. He was consistent in a way that surprised and calmed her at the same time. He would show up at the makeshift studio Emily kept in the guest room of her apartment, bringing coffee and warm cheese bread from a bakery he had discovered on the way. He would sit quietly, watching her work on delicate pieces, asking insightful questions about techniques and materials, genuinely fascinated by the creative process. Lily adopted him with alarming ease, and it was no longer uncommon for the little girl to ask when Uncle Dan would show up again. Emily realized she was letting Daniel into not only her life, but also into Lily's heart, and that scared her more than she was willing to admit. One night, after Lily had fallen asleep and Daniel was still there helping to organize the crystal accounts that had arrived that morning, she finally voiced her fear. She said she was worried about Lily getting too attached and then suffering if things didn't work out between them. Daniel stopped what he was doing and looked at Emily with that intensity that made her stomach flip. He said he understood the fear, that he was scared too. But if they lived in fear of hurting or being hurt, they would never try anything worthwhile. Then he took her hands in his and made a promise. He said he wouldn't play with Lily's feelings, that he committed to being present, not just when things were easy, but also when they got tough. The sincerity in his eyes made Emily believe, and she allowed herself to relax a little more in the relationship. Daniel began to naturally participate in their routines. He would pick them up from Lily's school sometimes, patiently waiting while the little girl showed him the drawings she had made. He cooked dinner in Emily's apartment, discovering he had an unexpected talent for pasta. Lily taught him how to play house, and Emily cherished the image of Daniel sitting on the living room floor, too big for the pink plastic table, having imaginary tea with absolute seriousness, while Lily directed the play. It was on a Saturday morning, almost a month after their first date, that Daniel suggested Emily and Lily visit his apartment. He had avoided taking them there until then, and Emily had respected that without asking too many questions. But now he said he wanted to show them where he lived, introduce Max, and share that part of his life too. Daniel's apartment was in a modern building in Greenwich Village, all glass and steel, but with a surprisingly cozy interior. Emily noticed personal touches everywhere: books stacked on shelves, well-cared-for plants, travel photos in discreet frames, and of course Max, a grey cat with green eyes who watched Lily with suspicion before deciding she was acceptable. Lily was enchanted by the cat and the panoramic view from the living room. While she played hide-and-seek with Max, Daniel took Emily to his office. It was a masculine but organized space, with 3 monitors on the desk and whiteboards filled with diagrams and notes. He showed her some of the projects he was developing, explaining in simple terms how digital security worked. Emily was impressed not only by his intelligence, but by the passion that shone through when he spoke about his work. Daniel showed her a framed photo on his desk with an older man who was clearly his father. He shared that his father had been an engineer who had taught Daniel how to program. When he was just 8 years old, everything he built had roots in those Saturday afternoons, learning logic and coding. The way Daniel spoke about his father with nostalgia but also with gratitude made Emily share more about her own parents. She told him that her mother was an artisan who had taught Emily to work with her hands from a young age, and that each piece of jewelry she created carried a bit of those teachings. Her father was a musician who played guitar in bars on weekends and had given Emily a love for beautiful and unique things. They had died in a car accident while returning from a performance, leaving Emily alone at 20, pregnant and terrified. Daniel pulled her into a hug when he saw the tears in her eyes and told her she was the strongest person he knew, that raising Lily alone while also building a career was extraordinary. Lunch was a collective effort, with Lily helping to mix the salad, while Daniel prepared a risotto that smelled of wine and Emily set the table. There was something deeply domestic and comforting in that moment, the 3 of them working together in the sunny kitchen, and Emily realized that this was what had been missing in her life without her knowing. Not just a romantic partner, but someone who wanted to be part of the everyday, the little things that built a life together. During lunch, Lily announced that she wanted Daniel to live with them, and Emily nearly choked on her wine. Daniel laughed and said he needed to think about it, that it was a very important decision, but his eyes met Emily's with a silent question that made her heart race. After lunch, while Lily took a nap on the couch covered with a blanket, Daniel and Emily finally had some time alone. They sat on the terrace overlooking the city, and Daniel took her hand, intertwining their fingers. He said he needed to tell her something he had avoided discussing before, but now felt he should share. Emily tensed, preparing for some terrible revelation, but what came was different. Daniel shared that he had been engaged 3 years ago, that the woman had ended it because he worked too much, lived too much for the company, and had nothing left for a real relationship. He said he had been devastated at the time, but over time he realized she was right, that he had hidden in work for so long that he no longer knew how to be anything else. Meeting Emily and Lily had changed that, Daniel continued. For the first time, he wanted to leave the office early, wanted to have free weekends, wanted to build memories that didn't involve spreadsheets and meetings. He said he was learning to live again and wanted to do that with them, if Emily wanted. The vulnerability in his voice made Emily squeeze the hand he held. She said she was scared too, that trusting again after everything she had been through was terrifying. But with him, it felt possible that he made her want to risk her heart again, even knowing it could hurt. They kissed on the terrace while the city buzzed below, and the kiss was different from the previous ones. It held promise, depth, and the taste of something becoming real and solid. When they pulled apart, Daniel asked if Emily wanted to have dinner with him that night. Just the two of them, as he could arrange for a trusted babysitter to stay with Lily. Emily hesitated because she rarely left her daughter with strangers, but Daniel explained that it was the daughter of a close friend, a student of education, and that he had been cared for by her a few times when he needed to travel and Max needed attention. The idea of a dinner just for them, without worrying about schedules or Lily listening, was too tempting to refuse. The evening arrived quickly. The babysitter, a friendly young woman named Julia, arrived promptly at 7, and Emily spent 15 minutes giving detailed instructions before Daniel gently pulled her toward the door, saying everything was under control. They went to a Japanese restaurant that Daniel loved, an intimate place with soft lighting and exceptional food. Sitting across from each other, without Lily as a buffer between them, Emily realized she was getting nervous in a different way. It was pure vulnerability, without defenses, just her and him and everything that hadn't been said yet. Daniel ordered sake, and they toasted to new beginnings. The conversation flowed naturally, from embarrassing teenage stories to dreams for the future. Emily shared that she wanted to expand her business, perhaps have her own space where she could also teach jewelry-making classes. Daniel talked about wanting to travel more, see the world beyond conferences and business meetings, and that he would like Emily and Lily to join him on those adventures when possible. The ease with which he included the two of them in his future plans warmed Emily's heart. When dessert arrived, a mix of flavors they shared, Daniel became serious. He said he knew it was early, that they had only known each other for a month, but he couldn't imagine his life without Emily and Lily now, that he woke up thinking about them, that the day got better when he saw her message, that laughing with Lily had become his favorite moment of the week. He wasn't asking for anything specific, just wanting her to know where his heart was. Emily felt her eyes sting and said she felt the same, that she was scared of falling in love so quickly, but she couldn't stop. Daniel held her hand across the table and said she didn't need to stop, that she could let it happen, that he would be there for whatever came next. And Emily decided to believe, to fully dive into what they were building together. When they returned to her apartment and found Lily sleeping soundly and Julia watching television, Emily invited Daniel to... It wasn't just about physical attraction, although that was there too, but about wanting to wake up with him by her side, about wanting to share not only the beautiful moments, but also the ordinary ones. Daniel agreed, and for the first time they slept together in Emily's bed, intertwined, and she felt safe in a way she hadn't felt since before Lily was born. The future was still uncertain, but in that moment, in his arms, Emily allowed herself to simply feel the happiness of the present. Emily woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. It took her a few seconds to process that she wasn't alone in bed, that Daniel had stayed over, and that apparently he and Lily were already awake. She stretched and made her way to the kitchen still in her pajamas, finding a scene that made her heart melt. Daniel was making pancakes while Lily, sitting on the counter, which she had never been allowed to climb, was narrating a complicated story about a unicorn that had lost its horn. Daniel was listening with absolute attention, asking serious questions about where the unicorn lived and if it had friends who could help. When they noticed Emily standing in the doorway watching, Lily shouted excitedly that Uncle Dan was making a special breakfast. Daniel turned and smiled in that way that made his eyes sparkle, saying, "Good morning," his voice still hoarse from sleep. Emily approached and he kissed her lightly, aware of Lily watching everything with immense interest. The normality of that moment, the ease with which the three existed in that small space, was both wonderful and frightening. Emily had built a life for herself and Lily for so long that letting someone in felt like rewriting all the rules she knew. After breakfast, Daniel needed to go home to change for a meeting he had in the afternoon. When he left, after saying goodbye with kisses and promises to call later, Lily immediately asked when he would be back. Emily sat on the sofa and pulled her daughter onto her lap, carefully asking what Lily thought of Uncle Dan. The girl's eyes lit up as she said she liked him a lot, that he was nice and funny, and that he made Mommy smile more. The simple yet profound observation made Emily hug her daughter tightly, realizing that Lily had sensed the sadness and loneliness Emily had tried to hide all those years. The following week brought an adjusted routine. Daniel stayed over 2 or 3 times, always bringing Max in a carrier because the cat got depressed when left alone for too long. Lily loved having the cat around, and Emily found herself thinking about how that 2-bedroom apartment was starting to feel small for all of them. Daniel never pressured her about moving in together, but Emily could see in his eyes that the thought was there, just as it was in hers. It was just a matter of time and courage to have that conversation. It was during a dinner at Marina's house, Emily's best friend, that things became clearer. Marina had insisted on getting to know Daniel properly and organized a dinner with her husband and their 5-year-old twin boys. The night was chaotic in the way dinners with small children always are, but also revealing. Emily watched Daniel interact not only with Lily, but also with the twins, playing tag in the garden and building an impossible tower of blocks that kept collapsing under the children's hysterical laughter. Marina pulled Emily into the kitchen while the men dealt with dessert and said directly that Daniel was different from anyone Emily had introduced before. Emily laughed because Marina was right. She had never introduced anyone before. Daniel was the first. Marina became serious and held her friend's hands, saying she could see how Emily looked at him and how he looked back, and that it was real, that she deserved that happiness after everything she had fought for alone. The words made Emily's eyes burn, and she admitted that she was in love, completely and irrevocably in love, and that terrified her. Marina said that was how it was, that true love always scared you because it meant having something to lose, but it was worth every second of terror for the joy it brought. When they returned to the living room, they found Daniel sleeping on the sofa with Lily lying on top of him and the twins leaning against him, one on each side, all watching an animated movie. The scene was so tender that the 2 women paused just to appreciate it. Marina's husband, Bruno, commented that Daniel was a good guy, that he had that calmness that came from someone who knew what they wanted in life. When they finally left, with Lily already asleep in Daniel's arms, Emily felt a certainty settling in her chest. She wanted that every day. She wanted to wake up with him, to build memories and routines, and a life that was theirs. In the car, on the way home, with Lily softly snoring in the back seat, Emily finally verbalized what she had been thinking. She said she wanted him to live with them, that she knew it was fast, but when something felt right, timing didn't matter as much. Daniel almost crashed the car in surprise and had to pull over to process what he had heard. He turned to Emily and asked if she was sure, if she wasn't feeling pressured by how things were happening. Emily shook her head and said she had never been so sure of anything, that she wanted him there every day, being part of everything, not just the good parts, but also the difficult ones. Daniel kissed her intensely, stealing the breath from her lungs, and when they separated, he was smiling in a way that lit up his entire face. He said yes, he wanted to live with them, that he had thought about it every day, but he didn't want to rush Emily. They laughed at the synchronicity of their feelings. As thoughts settled, They resumed their journey home, now as a couple who had decided to take the next step together. In the following days, Daniel began to bring things over gradually. Clothes, books, toiletries, and Max permanently. Lily was ecstatic about the news, helping to organize Uncle Daniel's things in her mom's wardrobe. But with the move came adjustments and the first real challenges. Daniel worked long hours, and there were days he came home late and exhausted, wanting only silence when Lily was bursting with energy. Emily needed to balance her studio, motherhood, and now also the relationship. There were moments when she felt she was failing on all fronts. It was on one particularly difficult night after Lily had thrown an epic tantrum because she wanted Daniel to put her to bed. But he was in an online meeting that Emily broke down. She started crying in the kitchen while washing the dishes. Daniel appeared behind her, turning off the tap and gently turning her to face him. Emily spilled everything. She said she was afraid she wouldn't be able to make this work, that maybe they had been too impulsive, that Lily was getting too attached. And if he decided it was too much, she didn't know how she would explain it to her daughter. Daniel listened intently, holding her face in his hands, and when she finished, he said something that changed everything. He said that relationships weren't easy, that living together required work and patience, but none of that meant they were wrong, that having tough days was normal, that disagreeing was healthy, and that he wasn't going anywhere just because things got complicated. He had made a conscious choice to be there, and that choice was permanent unless she asked him to leave. The certainty in his voice calmed the storm in Emily's chest. She realized she was projecting old insecurities onto a new situation, that Daniel wasn't like Lily's father. He wasn't someone who would run away when things got tough. She apologized for her outburst, and Daniel said she didn't need to apologize for feeling that they would learn together how to navigate this. They talked for hours that night after Lily fell asleep, setting boundaries and expectations, discussing how to share responsibilities and communicate better when they felt overwhelmed. The difficult conversation ended up bringing them closer. Emily felt they could survive the tough moments if they could talk like this, with honesty and without fear of hurting each other. Daniel admitted he also had insecurities, that he was afraid he wouldn't be good enough as a father figure for Lily, that he didn't know if he was doing things right. Emily said there was no manual, that she was improvising every day too, and the fact that he cared enough to be afraid showed that he would do well. Weeks passed, and the three of them found a rhythm that worked. Daniel learned to give a heads up when he would have heavy work days, and Emily learned to ask for help when she needed it. Lily gained a more structured routine, which included individual time with each adult, and she thrived with the attention. Emily saw her daughter developing in new ways, asking questions about astronomy because Daniel had shown her constellations, drawing computers because Uncle Daniel had explained how they worked. His presence was shaping Lily in beautiful ways, and it made Emily's heart overflow with gratitude. It was on a Saturday morning, 2 months after Daniel officially moved in, that Emily realized she had found what she had always wanted without knowing it. They were in her small studio, Daniel helping her catalog new pieces while Lily drew on the floor. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating everything in golden hues, and soft music played in the background. It was so ordinary, so common, yet at the same time extraordinary, because it was theirs. Emily looked at Daniel, focused on the labels, and at Lily, humming while coloring, and felt a deep peace. She was afraid it might be temporary, that something would come along and ruin it, but she was learning to live in the present, not letting the fear of the future steal the joy of now. And in that moment, with her little improvised but perfect family, Emily was completely happy. 6 months after Daniel moved in, the apartment in Brooklyn was definitely too small. Max had claimed every available surface. Emily's work tools competed for space with Daniel's tech gadgets, and Lily complained that she had nowhere to store all the new toys that Uncle Daniel insisted on bringing. It was during a chaotic breakfast, with Lily spilling juice on the table while trying to reach Daniel's tablet, that he let slip the idea he had been considering for weeks. He asked if Emily had thought about moving to a bigger place, maybe a house with a yard where Lily could play and she could have a real studio. Emily paused in the middle of cleaning up the spilled juice and looked at Daniel in surprise. The idea was tempting, but also frightening. Moving meant a greater commitment. It meant intertwining their lives even more permanently. Daniel noticed her hesitation and quickly explained that he wasn't pressuring her, just thinking about possibilities, that his apartment in Greenwich Village was empty and he could sell it, and that together they could afford something better. Emily bit her lip thinking, and Lily chose that moment to declare that she wanted a house with a garden to catch butterflies. The two adults laughed at the girl's timely intervention. The conversation hung in the air for a few days while Emily processed it. She talked to Marina during lunch, laying out all her doubts and fears. Marina was direct as always, asking if Emily saw a future with Daniel or if she was just waiting for the relationship to end. The brutally honest question made Emily stop and think seriously. She saw a future. She saw years and decades. She saw Lily growing up with Daniel present. She saw herself aging alongside him. So why was she hesitating? Emily suggested that perhaps it was the fear of being too happy, of having so much to lose. And she was right. Emily had spent so much time protecting her heart that now, when she was happy, the fear of losing it was paralyzing. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Emily sought out Daniel, who was on the couch reviewing reports. She closed his laptop and sat on his lap, making Daniel put everything aside to pay attention. Emily said she wanted to look for a house, that she was ready to take that step, but she needed him to understand how huge that was for her, that buying a house together meant admitting they were building something permanent, and that she needed to be absolutely sure he wanted that too. Daniel held her face with both hands and said he had never been so sure of anything, that he wanted everything with her, a house, a future, maybe even siblings for Lily if she wanted them one day. The mention of more children made Emily's heart race, but it was a good kind of shock, full of possibilities instead of fear. The house hunt became an adventure on weekends. They visited properties with Lily, who had very strong opinions about each place. It had to have a yard for Max, a pretty room for her, and preferably a tree to make a treehouse. Daniel took Lily's demands as seriously as Emily's practical concerns about location and price, making detailed lists and comparisons. It was at the fifth house they visited, a charming townhouse in a neighborhood with a fruit tree in the yard, that they all knew at the same time it was the one. Lily ran across the lawn, screaming with joy. Max explored every corner with feline approval, and Emily imagined her studio in the back room with perfect natural light. Daniel held her hand while they watched Lily play and asked what she was thinking. Emily said she was thinking that this felt like home in a way that no place had since her parents passed away. Daniel pulled her into a hug and whispered that they should make an offer. The buying process was stressful, as it always is, with endless paperwork and tense negotiations. But 3 months later, they had the keys. The move was chaotic, boxes everywhere, and Lily was overly excited about the novelty. But when they finally organized everything and spent their first night in the new house, Emily felt a deep peace. She was in the kitchen making coffee when Daniel appeared in the morning with Lily in his arms, still in her pajamas. He kissed her good morning and said he had woken up, not knowing where he was for a second, but when he remembered, he smiled like an idiot. Lily asked to get down and ran out to the yard, where Max was already supervising the territory. Daniel hugged Emily from behind as they watched through the window the girl chasing the cat among the plants. He said that this was everything he had always wanted without knowing it. And Emily nodded, leaning against his chest and closing her eyes to imprint that moment in her memory. The first months in the new house brought new routines. Emily set up her dream studio and began receiving clients for personalized consultations, the business growing in ways she had barely dared to dream before. Daniel transformed one of the rooms into an office, but made it a point to work from home at least 3 days a week to be more present. Lily started attending a new school nearby, where she quickly made friends and participated in every possible activity. Life was good, better than good. It was full in a way that sometimes scared Emily. It was during a dinner celebrating the first year since they met that Daniel did something Emily didn't expect. They'd gone to a fancy restaurant, left Lily with Sarah, and were having dessert when Daniel became serious. He started talking about how the last year had been transformative, about how Emily and Lily had given meaning to his life in ways he never knew were possible. Emily was smiling, thinking it was just romantic sentimentality, when Daniel stood up from his chair and knelt beside the table. Emily's heart stopped completely. Daniel took a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a delicate ring with a blue stone, which Emily recognized as aquamarine Lily's birthstone. He said he had asked for Lily's help in choosing it, that the three of them were already a family, but he wanted to make it official if Emily would marry him. Tears streamed down Emily's face before she could even fully process it. The entire restaurant was watching, but she didn't care. She could only focus on Daniel's eyes, filled with hope and love. She said yes, before even thinking. Yes, with all the certainty she had in her body, and Daniel pulled her in for a kiss as the entire restaurant applauded. When he placed the ring on her finger and looked at the stone shining in the light, Emily felt as if everything had come full circle. They returned home floating, eager to share the news with Lily. Sarah had texted to say that Lily had fallen asleep there, so they would have to wait until the next morning. Daniel and Emily spent the night awake, talking about plans, about what the wedding would be like, about the future that was now officially guaranteed. Daniel confessed that he had bought the ring 2 months earlier, but he was waiting for their anniversary, wanting it to be special. Emily said it had been perfect, that everything with him always was. The next morning they went to pick up Lily early, barely able to contain their excitement. When they arrived at Sarah's house and shared the news, Lily took a few seconds to understand and then screamed so loudly that it startled the twins. She asked if that meant Uncle Daniel was going to be her real dad now. And Daniel, he knelt down to be at her height. He said that if she wanted, he would love to be called Dad, but that she didn't have to if she didn't feel comfortable yet. Lily threw her arms around his neck and said she wanted to, that she had always wanted a dad like her friends. Emily covered her mouth to avoid sobbing too loudly, seeing her daughter and the man she loved intertwined in that embrace that meant real family. Sarah hugged Emily and whispered that she was happy for her, that she deserved all that happiness and more. Emily just nodded because she didn't trust her voice. On the way back home, with Lily chattering excitedly in the back seat about how she was going to help choose the wedding dress, Emily looked at Daniel driving and felt an absolute certainty. She was still scared. She would always be, for loving and becoming vulnerable. But the joy was greater than the fear. She had learned that it was worth risking her heart when the person on the other side promised to take care of it, with the same tenderness that you take care of theirs. The 3 months following the proposal were a mix of planning and good anxiety. Emily and Daniel decided that the wedding would be simple but meaningful, only close family and dear friends. Lily was at the center of it all, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, giving opinions on every detail with the seriousness of an adult. Daniel included the girl in every decision, and Emily saw how important it was for Lily to feel part of it all, instead of just an observer. The chosen date was a spring Saturday, and the location would be their own backyard under the fruit tree that Lily loved so much. The week before the wedding, Emily woke up with severe nausea. She thought it was nerves until she realized she was late. Her heart raced with a possibility she hadn't considered, and she rushed to the pharmacy as soon as Lily went to school. The positive test in her hand made her legs weak. She sat on the bathroom floor, processing a mix of joy and fear taking over. When Daniel came home that night, he found Emily in the kitchen with a strange expression. He asked what had happened, immediate concern on his face, and Emily simply handed him the test. Daniel looked at the plastic object, not understanding for what felt like an eternity, and when he finally processed it, their eyes filled with tears. He asked if it was true, if they were going to have a baby, and Emily nodded, feeling her own tears falling. Daniel picked her up and spun her around the kitchen, laughing and crying at the same time, and that's how Lily found them when she returned from the neighbor's house where she had gone to play. The girl asked why they were crying, and Emily called her over. With Daniel by her side, holding her hand, she told Lily that she was going to be a big sister. Lily took a moment to process, and then screamed with joy so loudly that Max ran away scared. The news of the pregnancy added an extra layer of emotion to the wedding. Emily decided not to tell anyone besides Sarah and Daniel's parents for now, wanting to keep that delicious secret just for the three of them for the time being. On the morning of the wedding, she woke up with Lily lying between her and Daniel, the three of them piled on the big bed. Daniel was already awake, looking at her with the expression that made Emily's heart melt. He whispered good morning and said that in a few hours she would officially be his wife. Emily smiled and said she had felt like his wife for months, that the paper was just a formality. Sarah arrived early to help Emily get ready, bringing non-alcoholic champagne, especially for the pregnant bride. Lily looked beautiful in a light pink dress she had chosen herself, her hair adorned with small flowers. Emily wore a simple yet elegant cream dress, nothing traditional white, just something that made her feel like herself. When she looked in, the mirror completely ready, with Sarah adjusting the delicate veil, Emily barely recognized the woman staring back. It was her, but a radiant version of happiness, so different from the scared woman who had gone to that event a year ago. The backyard was transformed, chairs arranged in a semicircle under the fruit tree, white and pink flowers everywhere and soft music playing. The guests were already seated when the time came. Daniel was at the makeshift altar next to the officiant, wearing a light grey suit that highlighted his brown eyes. When he saw Emily appear, he couldn't hold back the tears. Lily walked ahead of her, throwing petals with impressive dedication, and Emily followed behind with Sarah by her side, since she didn't have a father to give her away. But it didn't matter. She was willingly surrendering, consciously choosing that man and that life. When Emily reached the altar and Daniel held her hands, he whispered that she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The ceremony was short, but intense. They had written their own vows, and when it was Daniel's turn to speak, he turned to Lily as well. He said he was making vows not just for Emily, but for both of them, promising to love and care for them for the rest of his life, that Lily had his heart from the very first moment, and that being her dad was the honor of his life. Lily started to cry, and Emily had to fight not to completely break down. When it was Emily's turn, she looked into Daniel's eyes and said that a year ago she was lost, thinking it had been a mistake to go to that event, that she had confused him with a security guard because she was desperate to protect herself, but that in the end he had become her true protection, not from external threats, but from the fear of never being happy again, that he had taught her and Lily what it was family. It was unconditional love that would spend the rest of their lives showing how much he meant to them. There wasn't a dry eye when she finished. The exchange of rings was done with trembling hands, and when the officiant finally said that Daniel could kiss the bride, The kiss was filled with promise and future. The guests applauded, and Lily jumped among them asking for a group hug, making everyone laugh through their tears. The party was exactly as they wanted, intimate and joyful. Lily danced with Daniel to the first song, stepping on his feet as she twirled in her flowing dress. Then it was Emily's turn to dance with her now husband, while everyone watched, captivated. During dinner, Daniel stood up to make a toast. He thanked everyone for being there and then looked at Emily with that smile she loved. He said he had an announcement to make, that he couldn't keep a secret. Emily's eyes widened, realizing what he was about to do, and Daniel took her hand and announced that in a few months their family would be growing, that they were going to have a baby. The reaction was immediate. Shouts of joy and hugs, Lily jumping and shouting that she had always wanted to be an older sister. Daniel's grandmother cried tears of happiness, and Sarah just smiled, knowing that this was the complete realization of her best friend's happiness. As the party began to wind down and the guests left, only the three of them remained in the backyard, illuminated by Christmas lights that Daniel had hung. Lily was exhausted, sleeping on the living room sofa with Max curled up beside her. Daniel and Emily sat on the grass, looking at the stars, his hand resting on her still flat belly. Daniel said he was scared of being a father, that with Lily it was different because she was already grown, but with a newborn, he didn't know if he would know what to do. Emily laughed and said she hadn't known what to do with Lily either, that they had learned together and would do the same with this baby. Emily mentioned that she had thought of a name if it was a boy. Daniel asked which one. She said she would like to honor his father if he agreed. Daniel fell silent for a long moment, too emotional to speak. He finally said that his father would have loved to meet Emily and Lily, that he would have been the most dedicated grandfather in the world, and that being able to give his name to their son was the greatest honor. They stayed there for a while longer, planning the future, talking about converting the guest room into a nursery, about what it would be like to see Lily as an older sister, about all the adventures still to come. When they finally went inside, they carried Lily, still sleeping, to her room. Emily tucked the girl into bed and kissed her forehead, whispering that she loved her more than anything. Daniel did the same, and in that simple moment, watching their daughter sleep, Emily felt a fullness she had never experienced before. She had a real family. Now, it wasn't just her and Lily against the world, but a complete team. She had a husband who loved her, a daughter who thrived on love and attention, and a baby on the way who would be raised in a nurturing environment. As they prepared for bed, Daniel hugged Emily from behind and said that a year ago, when he had seen her desperately asking for help at the event, he never imagined she would become the most important person in his life, that he had pretended to be a bodyguard on impulse, but in the end, he had truly become the protector of her heart. Emily turned in his arms and said she also never imagined that mistaking someone for security would completely change her life, that she had gone to that event wanting to forget the past and had found her entire future waiting for her. They lay entwined, Daniel's hands resting protectively on Emily's belly where new life was growing. Through the open window, they could hear the nighttime sounds of the neighborhood, and in the distance, the purring of Max, who had abandoned Lily to sleep on the living room chair. Everything was in its place. Everything made sense. And for the first time in her life, Emily was not afraid of tomorrow. She had built something solid, something that nothing could shake because it was made of daily choices of love and commitment. Daniel kissed her hair and whispered that he loved her, and Emily replied the same before closing her eyes, letting sleep come accompanied by sweet dreams. They had a future ahead, full of challenges and joys, of growth and love, and they were ready to live every second together. And this was what Emily thought before falling completely asleep. This was everything she had ever wanted, a family, a home, and true love that chose to stay even when things got tough. And she had achieved it, not by luck, but by having the courage to accept the outstretched hand of a stranger on a night that seemed lost, and turning that moment of despair into the best decision of her life. Ah,